Hari Om. Today's video is for the Saturday class Gita students, as we will be discussing chapter 14 from verse 4 onwards. So let us recap the first three verses of chapter 14, whereby the Lord has explained that the knowledge He is going to reveal in this chapter, in the first verse, He says, it will lead us to the highest goal, Param Siddhim, the highest state of perfection, which means when we attain this knowledge and we accept the reality of this knowledge, while living we attain a state of Jivan Mukta, that is, we are freed from all the daily ups and downs of life. Not that they don't occur, we still go through, but they don't affect us because we stop identifying with this body. We identify ourselves as the eternal consciousness. And upon death, the Lord said in verse number 2 of chapter 14 that we will not come back, such a Jivan Mukta will not come back for subsequent births. He or she will escape the cycle of birth and deaths. That means ultimately with this knowledge, one will attain moksha. And then the Lord went on to explain the creation of this world. In verse number 3, He said that the entire creation comes from what He described as the womb, or what is called the Mahad Brahma. The Mahad Brahma is which is the source of manifestation, that contains all the materials for the manifestation. So that is matter, and Lord says into this matter He blesses this matter with His consciousness. So He enlivens this matter and everything comes into existence. So the important point we have to understand is that there is, at the point of total dissolution, nothing is destroyed. Whatever remaining karmas, whatever what we call rewards or punishments, everything goes back into unmanifest form. And when the new cycle starts, everything again is brought to manifestation. So up to verse number 3, the Lord has explained that there is a great womb of creation, and into this womb He energizes, He enlivens this womb to create. Then He goes on now in verse number 4 to explain further about this creation, and eventually He will start to help us to understand the role that the three gunas play in this creation, because that is the title of this chapter, the division of the three gunas. So now, what is the uniqueness of this great womb of creation? Why is it called Mahat? Mahat means something which is great. Now, any womb can give birth to one particular species. Example, a female monkey womb can only give birth to another monkey and not any other form or anything else. Whereas this Mahad Brahma is unique, that from this one womb, all varieties of wombs of all species come out from this womb. So everything in this world, all the varieties of species, moving and non-moving, come from this multiple wombs, and all these multiple wombs come from the main womb, which is called Mahad Brahma. So the Lord says here in verse number 4, chapter 14, He says, Yaha, whatever, Murtaya. Murtaya means forms, bodies of various species. Sambhavanti, they are born from what? Sarva Yonishu, meaning they are all the various forms, creations that we see, different shapes, size, colors. They are all born from Sarva Yonishu. They are born from all the different types of wombs. So some come from seeds, some come from a womb, some come in different ways. different ways that species are produced. For example, plants come from seeds, humans and mammals come from womb, insects come from insects, and birds come from egg. So these are all the different type of wombs, and they all come from Mahat Brahma. Now what happens when all these various forms are produced from the womb? The Lord says, Tasham, of them, of all these various species that are manifested, the Lord says, Mahat Brahma, this great womb, the great nourisher, is the yoni, it is the very womb. So that means the Mahat Brahma produces multiple wombs that give rise to multiple forms of creation. Okay, so it's a two-step process. From the Mahat Brahma comes the multiple wombs, from the multiple wombs or seed or egg or whatever comes the various types of creation. In fact, in the Padma Purana, there's Padma Purana, one of the 18 Puranas, it is mentioned that there are 8.4 million species in creation. Now, how is this derived? It is said that they are the division of this 8.4 million is comprised of this 900,000 species of aquatics. So everything that is found in waters, there are 900,000 different species, plus 2 million species of plants, plus 1.1 million species of insects, worms and reptiles, plus 1 million species of birds, 3 million species of animals, and 400,000 species of humans. If you add up all this, it comes to 8.4 million types of species. So this infinite womb has created all the variety of species. And what role does the Lord play? He says, Aham, I am, Bija, the seed, Pradha, giving, Pitaha, father. The Lord says, I am the seed-giving father. Now what he means is that the creation comes from the womb. It is all made of matter, the 5 elements, etc. And matter has got no life. So Lord says basically he is the seed-giving father, meaning he energizes or enlivens the entire creation to function. So this body is made of matter, and it is the enlivening principle that makes us alive, that makes us move, that makes us function. So this is what he explains in verse number 4. Now he begins to explain about the 3 gunas. Okay, so recap that this entire creation is made of matter, which is inert, plus consciousness, which gives life to this matter. So now, where do the 3 gunas come into this whole equation? So the Lord says in verse number 5 of chapter 14, he says, Gunas iti. Gunas are namely, and he names the 3 gunas, Sattvam, Rajas and Tamas. So there are 3 types of gunas. And what is the origin of these 3 gunas? Where do they come from? He says, Prakriti Sambhava. Sambhava means they are born of Prakriti. Prakriti means matter. The very material that is used in creation is called Prakriti. It is matter. Okay? So the 3 gunas, they are born from matter. They are contained in matter. They cause modifications to this matter. So what is the role that these 3 gunas play? Now, all the 3 gunas are in every aspect of creation. So we as human beings also have the 3 gunas. We have Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic gunas. The only difference is the proportion. Some human beings have more Sattvic, less Rajasic and Tamasic. Some have more Rajasic and less of the other 2. And this is what influences our thoughts, our desires, our personality, right? So, Sattvic Gunas, we're going to find out the definition the Lord is going to speak about in verse number 6 onwards, the definition of Sattvic Gunas, definition of Rajasic Gunas, and definition of Tamasic Gunas, and how they affect our personality. So, study of the Gunas is basically understanding our own personality. Okay, so if we just briefly look at the three Gunas, when anybody has Sattvic Gunas predominant, they are more inclined towards knowledge, towards purity. Rajasic Gunas, when they dominate us, our life is inclined towards endless selfish activity. And when Tamo Gunas are dominant in any human being, that human being likes to procrastinate, is lazy, is not interested in work. So he's inclined towards negligence, ignorance, and procrastination. So these are basically the three main natures of human being. So what does the Lord say here in verse number 5? He says, in verse number 5, he goes on to say that these three gunas, Sattvic, Rajasic, Tamasic, nibhatnanti, they bind. What do? They bind the dehinam, that is the jiva, the soul that is residing in this body. They bind the jiva, the soul, to this jiva is known as the embodied being. So they bind him to the dehe, the body. So the soul, because of the three gunas, they create a bondage, meaning they create an identification with this body. Now, all the three gunas have the capacity to bind. Now, what do we mean by that? As long as we identify with this body, we are then bound to this body. Whatever happens to this body, whatever happens to this mind, it affects us. So, we perform our actions thinking that we are this body, accepting that we are this body, and the minute we do that, we accumulate punyam and papam. We accumulate merits and demerits. So identification with this body is the cause of our bondage to subsequent cycle of birth and deaths. So the Lord wants to warn us that all the three gunas, Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic, all have the capacity to bind. So therefore, what is liberation? Liberation means, how do I cut the bondage of these three gunas? Once I learn to cut the bondage from these three gunas, I don't identify with this body. I identify myself as the consciousness in this body. I am free from all subsequent merits and demerits of my action. That means a realized soul is one who accepts himself as this consciousness who is the witness in this body. I am the consciousness, I am the witness to all actions, I am not the doer of all actions. So, cutting the bondage to the three gunas is our means to liberation. So now in verse number 6, the Lord goes on to give us further description about these three gunas. Okay, and the first topic that the Lord talks about is what is the nature or the definition of each guna. Okay, so even the society, if you look at the society, and this is a very sometimes a very misunderstood topic, that why is there a division of what we call castes? So there is a fourfold division. There are the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras. The reason why there is a division of four classes is because each type of group is suited to certain type of work. So who are the Brahmanas? The Brahmanas are those who have predominant Sattvic gunas. And because of this, they are very inclined towards attaining knowledge. So they're very ideal for them to enter the field of sharing knowledge. So the teachers, the lecturers, the researchers, basically they are sattvic, a dominant personality, and we call them brahmanas. The second type of group is called the Kshatriyas, who are Rajasic dominant. So they are good for protection of law and order. They are good in the field of government, administration, politics, etc. The third group of people are called Vaishyas. They are also Rajasic predominant, and they are good for engaging in commerce, business, etc. And then we have the fourth group of people who are the Sudras. They are Tamasic predominant, so they are not very good at attaining knowledge, but they are very good at work that requires labor. So your drivers, your delivery boys, your gardeners, etc., they are what we call the Sudras. Because of their tamasic nature, they are well suited for these jobs. So we must understand that this caste system is not subject to where in which family you're born. It is dependent on each individual's nature. You can be born into a family of scholars, but if you are tamasic nature, then you will not take up a job of teaching or lecturing, etc. So one has the freedom to move between the four castes. It is not that you're born in this family and you have to follow that. So we have to understand this caste system more in depth. So this is the first topic that Lord will talk about, and he starts with telling us the qualities of the sattvic guna. So he says tatra in verse number 6. He says tatra, among them, the three gunas. He says sattvam, the sattvic guna. What is the nature of sattvic guna? It is nirmalatvat. Nirmalatvat means it is pure. It is transparent. Now, what he means is that when sattvic guna is predominant, what we call, then there are pure thoughts in a person. It is transparent. There are clean thoughts. There are pure thoughts in a person. Because Rajasic gunas, what you call, make us think of our greedy thoughts. They make us think about selfish thoughts. But sattvic gunas, he says, are nirmalatvat. They are pure, and they are what we call, they induce pure thoughts or clean thoughts in us. Second example, he says, definition of sattvic gunas is prakashakam. They are the revealer. They shine, meaning that whatever knowledge a sattvic guna person finds it easy to receive and finds it easy to absorb knowledge. So that is prakashakam. It's the nature of sattvic gunas. Third quality, anamayam. Anamayam means sorrowless. Sorrowless means one enjoys a constant state of peace and joy, serenity, tranquil mind. So such a mind is also very conducive to meditation, etc. Okay, so anamayam is sorrowless. It is conducive for study, for contemplation, etc. But Krishna also cautions that a sattvic mind also binds. Now, how does it bind? Because a sattvic mind looks for quietness, looks for tranquility. It wants an environment which is peaceful. It seeks an environment which is peaceful. So, it also binds us in a way. So here he says, Badnati, the sattvic guna binds sangha through attachment. Attachment to what? Sukha, happiness. A sattvic mind always yearns for a peaceful, tranquil type of environment. Sattvic mind dislikes any situation where there is too much noise, there's too much of disturbance. So, in a way also, we seek and we are bound to search for places which are quiet and tranquil also. So Lord says also we have to be careful, because ultimately we cannot change the total environment. We have to engage in an environment that may be noisy, that people might be rude to us, people might be hostile to us, and a sattvic person cannot take all this. So we have to be very careful also that sattvic gunas also bind us to happiness, number one. Number two, and happiness is not always in our control. Second, sangha jnana, there is attachment to knowledge. So what is wrong with being attached to knowledge? Sometimes we have to be very careful. We are so much engrossed to knowledge, keep on seeking knowledge, that the more and more knowledge that we seek, we fail to realize that this knowledge has got to be put into practice. So a sattvic mind is only interested in gathering and seeking knowledge, but the purpose of seeking that knowledge is to put it into practice, to experience that. So God, what you call the connection with God cannot be found in books. Books are only pointing us to that direction, what to do, what type of lifestyle to lead. Ultimately, we have to put that knowledge into practice. So we must not be totally fixated, totally attached, and totally dependent on the knowledge, but ultimately we have to start putting it into practice. So in verse number 6, he has explained to us about the definition of sattvic gunas and how do sattvic gunas bind us. And now in verse number 7, he talks about rajasic gunas, what is the nature of rajasic gunas, and how the rajasic gunas bind us. So Lord says, with thee may you know that rajasic guna, when it dominates any human being, ragat makam. Ragat makam means rajasic gunas are the nature of passion, raga. Raga means passion. And the quality of passion manifests in any individual with two qualities. What are the two qualities? Trishna. Trishna is thirst, hankering. When that passion is there, it makes us hanker for what? Hanker for things that we do not have. So the rajasic mind is always scheming to acquire things that I'm never happy with what I have. So a rajasic mind is always thirsting to scheme to see what else he can add into his life. So Trishna is thirst or hankering. And the second quality of this passion is asanga, which is attachment. Now, what is different with this asanga or attachment? A rajasic mind is constantly working to hold on to what you have. So these are the two activities that occupy a rajasic mind. How to hold on to whatever position I have, to whatever possessions I have to maintain that. A certain standard in society I've attained. Now I've got to work hard to maintain that. And second is, the mind is also hankering for what I don't have. If I have one car, I want to work hard to maintain that car, but at the same time, I want to work hard to get a second car. I have one house, I want a bigger house. So it goes on and on. It drives us to continuous activity for these two reasons: acquisition and preservation. So people work hard to earn that money to maintain their lifestyle, and they also work hard to get that money to what we call, because of so many desires they want to fulfill. So the Lord says that this is the two qualities of a rajasic bound nature. Then he says, how does it bind us? He says, nibhatnati, it binds. The rajasic guna binds the individual to what? Karma sangena, attachment to karma, attachment to action, a life of endless activity. It drives a person, and thus it binds a person to this life, to this body. Now, if we look at the differences between a sattvic mind, a rajasic mind, and a tamasic mind, a sattvic mind is also productive. It is not that a sattvic person does not work hard. He also works hard. He is productive, but he enjoys a peace of mind. A rajasic mind is also productive, but has no peace of mind because there's constant hankering there for more and more and more. A tamasic mind is not productive because the person is only interested in sleep and food. But a tamasic mind has peace of mind. Ignorance is bliss. So, sattvic mind is productive plus peace of mind. Rajasic mind is productive but no peace of mind. Tamasic mind is not productive but has peace of mind. And as desires are endless, so actions also will be endless. There will always be more desires which will keep on driving one to more and more activity also. And then now the Lord describes in verse number 8 the nature of tamasic gunas and how they bind. So the Lord says, may you know that tamas or tamasic gunas, when they are predominant in any individual, aknya, the word here he uses here is aknyanam. Aknyanam, aknya, nyam means they are born, aknyajam means they are born of ignorance. So jnana is knowledge, aknya means ignorance. The word which is added as a suffix means it is, jam means it is born of ignorance. So tamasic gunas, when they predominate in any individual, they give birth to ignorance. The person wants to remain in a state of ignorance. He or she is not interested in acquiring any knowledge. They are more interested in sleep, in laziness, in procrastinations. So the Lord says these tamasic gunas, they are mohanam. They are a great deluder. They delude the person about what? About confused notions about life. What is right? What is wrong in life? What is good? What is bad? The person is in a state of confusion, unclear about the goals of life. So that person also is unable to make decisions. So this state of delusion affects all types of people who have the tamasic gunas. So the word here is, what he uses is sarva dehina, all the embodied beings. Now the one thing we have to understand is that if tamasic gunas delude an animal or insect, they are not interested in acquiring knowledge. That is fine because that is their very nature. But a human being has the capacity to rise. He has that intelligence to rise above the tamasic gunas. But it's so unfortunate that even though human beings have been gifted with the power of discrimination to change or uplift their lives, yet they fail to do so because they are constantly trapped in this tamasic gunas. So a whole human life is wasted. When you have that opportunity in this human birth to rise above and be something better, something greater, but because of these tamasic gunas, you're caught in a life of laziness, in a life of procrastination. So the Lord says, how do tamasic gunas bind us? He says, nibatnati, they bind an individual. How do they bind the tamasic gunas? Pramada, inadvertence, carelessness, oversight. Because whatever activity a tamasic person does, he makes many mistakes in every action. Now all of us make mistakes, but the difference is a tamasic person doesn't want to learn, doesn't want to change. So he continues to make the same mistakes over and over again. Next quality that binds a tamasic person, alasya, laziness, inertia. Such a person will find all ways and means to escape duties and responsibilities. Third quality of a tamasic person, nidra, sleep. He just wants to sleep. He is basically prone to laziness. So one who avoids or shuns all types of activity and actions. So all these are the consequences of tamoguna predominance. And this is what the Lord has explained in these verses 6, 7, and 8. The quality of sattva, how it binds. Verse number 7, the quality of rajas and how it binds. Verse number 8, the quality of tamas and how it binds. In the next verses then, Krishna will talk about how these gunas bind us and what is the ultimate effect of these three gunas. So we will take that up from verse number 9 in the next lesson. Hari Om Tat Sat.